Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I'm a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on September 25th, 2021 at approximately 5:31 a.m. PST. Well, welcome back. Thus far, we have covered in the last couple of weeks here, we have covered thought, choice. We broke success down into 4 parts: purpose, plan, persistence, and patience. Then we covered creation, foundation, expansion, community, self-awareness, prosperity, discrimination, and yesterday we covered awareness. Well, today we're going to deal with understanding. Now, before I get into this, if you like the videos, give us a thumbs up. I do ask you to subscribe to the channel, okay, and remember to hit the alert button so that when the next video comes out, you know it's there. The reason I'm asking is because I returned to this world to pass on one message, and that is that working together, we can make this a better world. Now, when I talk about working together, I don't just mean you and your family or you and those close to you. I mean every entity in existence. Funny thing about it is, regardless of how you got to where you are, it must be understood, or it is best to be understood, that every individual you've ever come across, everything in existence you've ever come across, is in exactly the same point. You are all right here, right now. And this is the only time in your life where you can ever change anything, where you can ever alter anything you're doing. Now, a long time ago, I suggested you get an idea in your head of what you're not content with in your life. Far easier, as I pointed out, it is far easier to identify the things that you're not content with than the things you are. Now, you can certainly go looking for little things, okay, but it's best to start with the real big, obvious ones. One of the mistakes I find a lot of people make is things are going, in their eyes, too smoothly. You're so used to a conflict, or you're so used to a struggle, that the moment something starts looking like it's going to work, you panic and you back off and you do something to self-sabotage. Okay. For instance, let's say your relationship is going perfect. Like there's no conflict that you can really see, but you're used to having conflicts. So what do you start doing? You start noticing the little things that don't fit. For instance, maybe you've always seen the person as being an absolute dress to the nines, and on one day everything's going perfect. Everything is just going great, but you've gotten too comfortable. So what do? You look for a flaw. It might be a tear in clothing. They were perfect, and oh, they're wearing something that has a tear in it. It may not be obvious to everybody else, but for you, it stands out like a sore thumb. Then you start working at that little nick in their armor, in this perfect picture, and you start finding flaws in it. Maybe your business is, maybe you're in the company you're working for. Everything's been going great. You've been being paid on time. You've not been having problems with the boss, right? And now all of a sudden you're looking at it going, well, it can't be this good. I'm told life has to be a struggle. Well, the people that tell you that life has to be a struggle are the same ones that are feeding off of your efforts. People say, work hard, you'll get ahead. Only what I found myself was people that work really, really hard for somebody else are not the ones getting paid. Now, don't get me wrong. If you've agreed to do a job, if you've been offered a job that has X parameters, and you said, yes, I'll do it, then whether you like the deal or not, that's the job you signed up for. That's the job you gave your word for. But for you personally to be successful, and you're the only one in existence that can be successful for you, you have to do the work. Now, once you take this to your heart and you really hold on to it was put to me one day years ago. Okay, I asked one of my mentors, what what to do when your heart and your head are in conflict. And the guy looks at me and he laughs and he says, well, that's easy. If your heart and your head are in conflict, or more to the point, when your heart and your head are in conflict, follow your heart, but use your head to get there. In other words, think your way to where you're heading. Now that includes, for me, that has included an incredible amount of use of this neat little tool here. This one called the list. Okay, works like an absolute charm. Now, today I've actually been doing it correctly. You set things off, and as you check them off, put a new one at the bottom. Okay. Keep your list to tasks that are 15 minutes to half an hour in length. Once you understand this here, once you understand that that is how it works, or this is what has worked for me. I will not swear that it works for you. I technically could, but that'll be overstated. But I will say wholeheartedly it has worked for me like a charm. Now, absolutely, when you're looking at things, understand you must be true to you first. That's karmic law. Okay, there's 3 karmic laws. Be true to yourself first. Do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. And energy out, energy in. Okay, by following those laws. Okay, and if you compare them to any spiritual or support guideline that you're working with, check them compared to those 3 laws. You will likely find that all of your guidelines fit inside those 3. If you find one that you feel does not, please drop me a line at one of the contact points below or in the comment section below and let me know, because to the best of my knowledge, thus far, every religion, every spiritual guideline, every support group I've taken a look at, that came out well. They've all fit inside. Now, there may be something that doesn't, but thus far, they all have. Okay. Now, one of the tricks to understanding the way the world works, and the way that your world works, and the way that energy works, I like the way it was put in one show. Okay. When you take a look at the CT scan, a picture of the chakras, a picture of the nervous system, okay, you're looking at the human body through a keyhole, through one aspect of it. It's when you put them all together that it becomes rather a critical point. Okay, that's when it becomes really imperative. Okay, that's when it becomes obvious and you start to get the bigger picture. Well, the same thing applies when we look at physics. If you take a look at the configuration, I don't even think it's physics. When you take a look at the configuration of cells, of organisms, plants, animals, planets, when you look at the universe, okay, when you look at the atom, they're all built in the same sort of fashion. Which does lend credence to the concept that something beyond nature is responsible. Nature took over, absolutely. But something beyond that set it in motion. Okay, now, is it technically possible that it just naturally evolved? Absolutely, it's possible. Okay, my belief is it's not what happened. My belief is that something, we'll call him God, source, universe, whatever you want to call him. Okay, many people have called him many things, right? Like Thunderbird or Odin or, any one of the gods. Okay. Myself, I was raised in a Christian home. Okay, and simply put, to me, it's very simple. That is simply the term I use, because what I came to understand as I started reading myself up on the different religions, I came to understand they were all teaching the same thing. Hence my return. Okay, that working together, we can make this a better world for all. Okay. Once you come to understand that the only difference between you and the guy next door to you, in all fairness, there are very few differences. You may notice a difference in skin color. And again, this brings us back to the thing, if everything is going reasonably well, people have a tendency, they've learned over the centuries, to look for the little differences. Skin color, hair color, speed you think. Okay, these are things that are very definitive differences. Okay, that are very blatantly obvious to most people. Now, you get into the more subtle ones. Orientation can be a difference. Well, quite frankly, is a difference. Okay, what you call a given thing could be a difference. Okay, now I'm not going to go into the number of different languages because, frankly, I speak English, and that's pretty much where it ends. Although I have been known to speak gibberish and slurries decades ago. Not to mention mumblies and stumblies. But the reality is, I like the way Shakespeare put it. Okay, where Shakespeare said, okay, at least that's where I first heard it, that a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. Okay, well, regardless of who the person is, regardless of the color the person is, understand that people are, no matter what their color, their orientation, their spiritual belief, people are, they're all held by a couple of common denominators. Understand, everybody is born, everybody is a child. And the reason I say that is you all have, whether you were born by humans, by something else in a test tube, you all have a mother and a father. Okay, so you're all kids, regardless of your age. Now, some of you have a tendency of taking offense to that. You don't want to be called a kid. I'll get over it. I don't know if you will, but I will. Because to me, if you're living, you're a kid. Yes, you may be a parent, you may be a grandfather, you may be a grandmother. There may be a lot of things you are. One of the things I'm not is subtle. Okay, but when you understand that everybody is a child, everybody is born, everybody does die, everybody, when they're happy, they smile. When they're sad, they frown, or in more extreme cases, they cry. And before you jump on that, men, crying is not something that does not make you macho. It simply means, oh my gosh, you've got emotions. You know what? That's what keeps people going a lot of the time. Okay, people, when they're hungry, they eat. When they're not happy with their weight, they stop eating. When they're tired, they sleep. These are all things that people have in common. And you notice we haven't bothered with people are blonde, people are brunette. That's a hair color. Okay. Whether or not your skin is a different color, that is a different pigmentation. It does not change the type of person you are. You're still members of the human species in all likelihood. Now, some of you may not be. Okay, some of you may be what are called hybrids. Part human, part something else. Now, bear in mind, a hybrid is not a mix between different human nationalities. A hybrid is something that is human and a different species. But most people on this planet that we interact with are members of the human species. And you must come to understand that if you desire these wars that are going on around the world to end. You've got to come to understand that just because you call your creator a different name does not mean it's a better name. It does not mean it's a worse name. Okay. And shooting somebody because they don't call it by the same name that you do does seem a little overstated. The reality is people have to come to understand that conflict, that war does not bring peace. It brings quiet. It does not bring peace. You know this because when people have forced a change in society, in somebody else's society, it's held for a little bit of time, and then it's gone back to pretty much the way it was. Yes, by different names with different people sitting in the seat. But if you want to get a real handle on that, there was a story written years ago. I think it was Orson Welles that wrote it. It might have been George Orwell. I really don't know, but I do know the name of the book was Animal Farm. And it is a very good book regarding the rendition, regarding what happens when somebody overthrows a government and puts somebody else in charge. It's a very good book, one of the few that I will readily recommend for much of anything. Okay, of course, there are a few others, but that one does paint a very clear story. So it would be very beneficial to understand that the more we understand about people, the more we can figure out how other people operate and how, much more importantly, how you as an individual think. The more you understand this, the more readily you'll be able to adapt to dealing with other people. Now, life is a compromise. Now, this does not mean that you should put your own life on hold by any means. It does mean that things are not always going to go your way. Okay, I've chosen to change a lot in my life because I got tired of the fighting. Okay, I got tired of the struggle, I got tired of the political back and forth, because what I found is that over the years, now I'm 58 at this point, but what I found is the different political parties, if you go back a number of decades, okay, you'll find that the political parties, their doctrine and the way they were treating things was the way the currents are dealing with each other. Now, in Canada, that would be pretty much between the Conservatives and the Liberals. Okay, in the States, it would be between the Republicans and the Democrats. But go back 50 years and take a look at their policies and their philosophies 50 years ago and compare them to what they are today. And from my understanding, what you'll find is they basically swap sides. What the Democrats believed in way back is what the liberals believe, is what the Republicans believe in now. What the liberals believed in way back is what the conservatives believe in now. You know, and the list goes on. But we have to understand, if a law is going to be passed, okay, if you're going to make a law, if it does not apply to everybody equally, regardless of their income bracket, it's not going to work out the same. It's not going to work out as well as you'd like. Okay, because it will create dissension in the ranks. It will create complications, and when that happens, you'll find that the culture breaks apart. It fragments. If the new culture does not make laws that are equally distributed that apply to everybody, then what happens is it will fracture again. Look at today's society. The churches used to be a couple of denominations, or not of denominations. They used to have a couple of mainstream religions. Now they've broken off into all sorts of little ones, and even the little ones are fracturing. Oh, we don't believe quite in that, so we're going to pick and choose what we desire to follow. Okay. The reason being, people have gotten off the track of community, of society, of how to cooperate, quite frankly. Now, it's funny, I can take that all the way back into school. Okay, when I was going to school, most of the teachers went, you're learning math, so it has to be done this way. I was lucky because the first group of teachers I had went, we desire an answer. That was all they were after. They desired the answer. They were not interested in how. The second set I had were interested in the answer, but they wanted some work. Okay. Preferably their own, but they wanted some work. Okay. So when we got to the end of it, I was left with a point of understanding that how you get to an answer does not matter half as much as the fact you get to an active answer. Okay. Again, one of the easiest ways to learn. You can certainly do it yourself. Okay, go out and try everything yourself. You can do it that way, but I will tell you it's a hard way and often it's a rough way. Okay, now, there are comical ways of looking at that, and there are ways that are a whole lot more, shall we say, less enjoyable. A whole lot more less enjoyable? That was good. By the way, this is a live recording, meaning when I get done this, I'll double check the date and time on it, and then I will simply post it. If I've got the date and time right, that's the way it is. So you'll get all the hiccups, all the quirks, the whole 9 yards. But we have to understand something. For me, I don't edit for a lot of reasons. One, I am the way I am. If you ever meet me face to face, if you ever hear me on the radio or talk to me on the radio, okay, you'll find them the same way. I still respond as directly as I do. I was told decades ago that I had to learn tact. You're not invited. I was told years ago that I needed to learn tact. And I looked at the person, I went, tact? And they went, yeah. The ability to tell somebody where to go and make them look forward to the trip. And I looked at the person, I went, I have one problem with that. And they went, what? I says, well, if I'm mad enough to tell somebody where to go, why do I care whether they're looking forward to the trip? Okay, for me, it's very simple. And it is something that I really do desire people to realize. When you desire something in life, doesn't matter what it is, be direct, be clear in what you're asking for, because the odds are the person you're asking for and asking something of is not necessarily going to pick up what you're hinting at. Okay, because they speak, they process things a little different than you do. Everybody does. But communication is a 50-50 problem. I've run into a lot of relationships with boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, even person to mechanic. Okay, where people go, oh, it's somebody else's fault that this is going the way it is. Understand, in communication, where it comes to communication, invariably, in my 48 years of doing this, invariably I have found communication is a 50-50 problem. Okay, now, this is something people have to understand. You cannot control somebody else's thoughts and behavior, at least not in most cases. There are a few of you that have actually figured out how to do it. There's a lot more that have figured out how to convince people they can do it. Okay, and I will not argue with the fact that it's possible. But on the whole, people do not control the way other people think. They don't control the way that they behave. Absolutely, other people may have encouraged you through their action or inaction to do something. But the most obvious one that I hear people complain about or lay blame to is I'm drinking because of so-and-so. So-and-so made me drink. Well, I got news for you. Unless they're holding you down and pouring the alcohol into your mouth, you're responsible for you drinking. They may well have created a problem that made you really desire to drink, under the misguided idea that will help. But here's the sad reality. Alcohol itself, much like drugs, all they do is they knock out your trained and learned inhibitors. Essentially, they knock out your ability to cope. Now, you have to come to understand this in your heart. Once you get it here, your brain can figure it out. Absolutely talk to the people that you know. Talk to the people that you've run into that you know have successfully done this. Okay. Now, one of the reasons I pulled away from a lot of people in the physical sense is because I got tired of banging my head against the wall. Too many people are so caught up in this idea that it's somebody else's fault. That what happened, what I got fed up with was going, no, it really isn't. Now, I do have to thank the people on Spaced Out Radio, because it was the people that were listening to the show I'm on, which is the ET Connection, R. Keith Andrews and the ET Connection. on Spaced Out Radio on the first Friday of every month from 9 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. And I will tell you, it was the encouragement of them that put me on the track to doing the videos, which is why when I pulled away from everybody else, I did not actually shut down the videos, and I will continue to do the videos. Even being somewhat reclusive, okay, I still deal with the videos, okay, because it's a more effective way, I think, of reaching more people to get this message out that working together we can make this a better world for virtually everybody. There will always be exceptions. Okay, and as I've told people, if I'm talking about something that does not apply to you, do your best not to take offense to it. Okay, I cannot specify everybody it does not apply to. I talk about the major majority of what I've personally borne witness to. So, when we're talking about understanding, it really boils down to pulling as much information as you can. Okay, from whatever source, taking that information and working through it. Now, it's funny. I've been reading through to the topic of reading. Okay, I heard it quoted one day that everybody should read 100 books before they die. Well, I've read 62. Okay, I mean the process of clearing off a couple more, and in the next couple of days, I will end up racking off at least 2 of them. Okay, well, in the next couple of weeks, I suspect. Okay, now I'm not a fast reader by any stretch. Okay, I know of one person in particular that seems to read so fast they can turn the page and read the whole page all in the blink of an eye. And they retain the information. Now, I asked that person how to go about getting faster at the reading side. And their comment was simple. Read. Okay, and this does not mean, by the way, that you should just watch a movie. Okay, now the only people that I recommend listen to audiobooks as a way of gaining the information, okay, are the blind. Because frankly, if you're blind, you're just not going to see the print. You're pretty much out of the loop on that one. But the thing that people forget with many people with senses that don't entirely work is that they usually have a lot higher drive to overcompensate for them. This does not make them a burden in and of themselves. It does make things a little more challenging in certain ways. Okay, but something to understand is regardless of what your physical strength, your senses, whatever your strengths or weaknesses, there will always be somebody better. There will always be somebody worse. Okay. Even when I had a conversation with a young lad the other day, well, actually, in this case, that particular conversation took place about a year ago. And even they admitted that they were not the top of the totem pole. They were the top that anybody knew of, but that anybody here knew of, but they were not the top of the totem pole, that there were others beyond them. Which I found rather fascinating for them to come forth and say, look, yes, according to everybody that knows me, I'm the best there is at what I do. But the reality is that there is always, 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 and I don't use that term very often, somebody that's better at it. Somebody that's had more experience. Somebody that has had less experience, yet has more drive. You have to understand we are all starting at the same place. And right here, right now, is the only time that you can change anything in your life. With that in mind, I'm bringing this to a close, and I will be back again tomorrow. But until then, take care of yourselves and each other, and for pity's sakes, stay positive.